Welcome to Global Trends. I'm Professor Christine Bamford. I'm the Chief Executive of SteppinUp Learning Academy. And the reason that we introduce global trends into the curriculum is because we believe this gives you a greater insight. It develops your strategic vision and enables you, as I would say, to understand global. That's global to local, and is very much part of, if you like, how you need to develop the adaptability skills as well as inclusive leadership as you go on your stepping up journey. Here we have a slide that shows, really just reinforces that really. What we have here is the global trends that shows the global positioned around the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The SDGs, as I've mentioned, are really part of understanding how we as inclusive leaders can also be socially aware, can understand about the sustainability issues that certainly are impacting us, well, every day, and we see news coming from all corners of the world about the impact. We have in front of us the slide that says 6 drivers for change. Now, we've taken our research from the Ministry of Defence Futures Lab, which completes a report every year. I do recommend it to you, or the executive summary, that shows the predictive trends probably for the next 50 years. Now, because it's predictive, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to come to pass, but certainly it is a view of the major influences that have been taken from research about what will impact under the UN SDGs. So the 6 drivers for change that we have in front of you are changing populations and habitats. We see a move much more into city dwelling for a whole range of different issues. We see about information or misinformation, but certainly generative AI, Copilot and GDPR will actually impact on our ability to be able to access information at any time. We see a desire for more human empowerment, and that is coming through at all generation levels, but certainly young people want their voices to be heard. We have the other driver for change that looks at climate change, so that's flood and fire, and terrible fires in Australia. We see Hollywood, if you like, also impacted by fire, and in California, where we see floods even here in the UK are impacting in some of the areas, which we've not seen before. So that environmental issue, it affects us all, really. And we have the move towards migration impacted maybe by floods and other environmental issues, but also conflict. And then we have the whole area of adaptation, and it becomes faster to adapt to new technologies, to other issues that are affecting us. So here we have, if you like, a reflection on what are the main 6 drivers for change and where should we go from here? Shall we have a bit more deeper dive into what they may have as drivers for change? Here is a sort of clearer slide in front of us, which shows under the steep heading. And the reason why we show different types of versions of the same message is because we like to be able to, dependent on your learning style, you might either want something visually or you might want something written. So here's 2 versions, more or less, of the same messages. But social changes in demographics and lifestyles is coming through regardless of where you might be in the world. And of course, technology, complete advancements there, amazing stuff happening in medical technology. The economy changes to that. we've all been impacted by an economy that's rife on conflict or environmental issues, and that is an emerging theme, more or less wherever you might live within the world. Again, it's linked to environmental changes, and then we're looking at politics and government, and geopolitics are no doubt affecting us more than maybe we might have thought in the past decade. We ask our learners just to explore either by themselves in a reflection way on the 6 drivers for change. But we also ask you to, go on to Copilot or ChatGPT and actually pop in what are the top 6 drivers, what are the 3 global issues. And interestingly, I have to say, between looking at it through generative AI last year, there has been a shift, whereas we had environment coming at the top. Now we're seeing geopolitical issues now being highlighted as the top major disruptor globally. So that would lead us, if you like, to continuing our exploration of the global issues that affect us. And my handy buddy, Copilot, enables me to have a regular check-in, and that makes sense for me, and hopefully for you, about how that can demonstrate the ever-changing nature. But in the main, the 6 drivers remain fairly constant. They just may change in the rank order. So we're going to highlight water stress, and the reason that I really like this image, well, I am a visual learner, but there we go, is that it shows quite starkly the impact across the world of where you might see water stress. Of course, if you find England, UK, you have to peer down there. Not generally impacted by water stress, although we have seen floods, we have seen impact on pollution in our waterways. We're not sort of unaffected, but you can see the large amounts of red across the world, and this is predicted to 2040, so reasonably we're in the middle of that, so we know we're going to be continually impacted by water stress. And so why is that important? Well, it's important because it impacts across the world, one, on increasing demand for energy and food. And the image there, of course, if you've got water stress, you may not be able to grow crops. And that may cause famine, which actually then impacts on migration and general movement of populations. We may not also be able to feed ourselves here in the UK, so we're reliant on exports. And that is also a critical issue. We had an example for Brexit where there was an impact on goods that could be imported. And for a while, our shelves looked quite low on stocks on certain things. And as I say, where's the avocados coming from for my avocado on toast? But it is a real issue because impact of the environment on what we would call the breadbasket, the countries that actually help us, if we're importing here in the UK, but also elsewhere, then that is going to not only be an issue locally for those communities and those countries, but it also may impact on us. And one issue, of course, was Ukraine war, which was a great supplier, I think, of wheat. And so that has actually really stopped that supply, not only impacting on that country's economic wealth, but also impacting on others. We have another, if you like, driver coming through, and that is about minerals and overuse of resources. So how we continue to generate enough fuel, heating, how we use more green sort of methodology to help us move that way, remains a driver for change. We've highlighted in the previous slides, of course, about habitat destruction, but then that impacts on our wild animals, on regrowth. And even though if you may replant, shall we say, a forest that has been devastated, then that will take some time. And so we're sort of shifting the eco balance of climate and vegetae and the habitats in a way that perhaps hasn't been seen before. And so what we do see is the emergence of novel solutions. And that, I think, is one of the plus sides, because humans are amazingly inventive. So where we might see some really major stresses and drivers for change, we also see innovation and creativity. Notice on the last slide, of course, there was conflict mentioned, and again, that is one of the disruptors to the environmental stress. So here, I really love this slide because those breadsticks look really yummy. But we're looking at what we might call simultaneous breadbasket failures that threaten the sufficiency of food supply. And that is quite an issue, and you can look at the link we've got here. And so we're in a world of growing environmental and strains on our increasingly complex food system. How we continue to manage what we call the breadbasket, which actually supplies both the countries and the communities, but also ourselves, is a continuing global strand. Changing populations and habitats, we're just coming back to that again. So we have, in some countries, of course, aging societies, and how we manage and maximise that is quite critical. We have unbalanced population growth, where we might be looking at greater population explosions in other parts of the world. Others simultaneously are having decreasing population, which does, of course, impact on the economy. There will be increasing migration and increasing urbanisation. And for us, of course, it's got higher and diverse workforces, which brings to innovation and new ideas due to that diversity of thought. And the impact on automation continues through technology, robotics, and it's fascinating to see how that's being taken forward into health and medical care and the impact that that has. So exploring changing habitats, we ask you, the learner, to just take a moment's pause to give some reflection on that, and to think about what is the impact locally for you, because there will be one, and how does that what is the causal link, going back to more global issues on changing habitats. And although not mentioned here, of course, the ocean and the changing habitat within the ocean, which takes up such a large percentage of our world, is also should be considered as part of the changing habitats. So we have just in front of asking you to reflect on the issues that we've looked at as drivers for change, both environmentally and societally and in the geopolitical sense, and get you just to have a moment's thought about how does that impact on your stretch assignment. And here we then start to look at more wider global impacts. Now, we always knew there would be a pandemic. I think what we have here is the scale of the pandemic and the impact that it's had. And the slide here talks about wiping out 20 years of educational gain. certainly we know here, we are in Bristol, which is a great city, very diverse. We know a number of families who were sincerely impacted. Uh, there was also many people lost their dear relatives and loved ones during that time, but in educational terms, in homeschooling, not everyone could have access to a digital device to continue their schooling. The isolation and the ability not to uh, sort of relate and engage with other people has also impacted on the education of that whole generation that is now coming into our workplace. So what have we learned from the pandemic? There will be another one. We just don't know when it is or what scale. But what have we learned, both from a government point of view and individually? Certainly, I would highlight, I know for me and my family, then it took us some time to come out from the isolation, still impacting now. So for me, I don't travel as much as I did. I was always hopping on a plane, going off somewhere, and certainly in large crowds, I still struggle. So whilst I'm looking at that, this is from a personal point of view. Of course, it has played out um, in other generations. So Teen Gen Z, as I know, I'm sorry about giving them titles, but that's how it is in the research, believe 200 million teenagers have experienced mental health issues, which are, they believe, directly as a result of COVID, home isolation, homeschooling. And this was taken across 26 countries with 40,000 responders. And Gen Z reporting poorer mental health than any other generation, attributed to COVID missing years in education. And we have still as an emerging factor, we've talked about technology, but about social media and some of the impact from social media that we perhaps hadn't predicted. So from 24 years and upwards, perhaps moving away from Gen X, but on the cusp, so to talk, they're saying that the impact, the research is saying, the impact on the cognitive function from 24 years and up has had an impact. So it isn't just, if you like, the social interaction, the way in which young people are thinking has been not enhanced through the impact of COVID. So we have here, COVID has led to extreme poverty, and that combined with the economic factors that we've highlighted, I think the research is saying that it's everywhere, and certainly in the UK we have food banks and issues that may, paycheck loans and other areas, and certainly we've seen a huge rise in the cost of living and the cost of food. And if you'd ask my parents, who actually went through the war years, of course, and had similar, they suffered quite a lot from not being able to access the right foods, but that we would at this point be having food banks to help support those who were in need, then I think they would have been very disappointed as a country, not just the UK but everywhere, that there is still poverty and reliant on others' goodwill. So again, we would be asking you to reflect on the impact of global stresses on mental health and well-being. Formidable picture here of Ebby sharing her thoughts. Ebby Cole was one of our participants, but it sort of captures, if you like, the essence of the debate, the dialogue that has emerged on mental health issues. So we would say, actually it's very difficult to read this slide, but hopefully you'll be able to see if it's in text form. We would ask that to practice well-being as a foundational skill. And again, this is perhaps in the last decade, we see mental health as being a critical issue, and certainly since COVID. And it's not just, oh, one or two people are experiencing mental health issues. It is really quite across the board. So if as part of your leadership capability journey, you're looking at, I'm going to develop more communication skills, more impact, think more about how I work with my teams. You also need to think about, how do I personally practice well-being, not just to be a role model for others, but to ensure that you can flex and move and understand the importance of having balance and well-being as a key driver within your own career management plan. And Michael Earle, if he is here, he's one of our team members, he would say it's not just a foundation skill, it's mandatory. Everyone should be doing this. But taking it right into the heart of what we do is probably quite critical in enabling you to be able to continue to navigate, to enjoy life, to be with your family, and to get the most out of the way in which we live and work in this very unusual period of time. So as we move from that, and we've touched on technology as being one of the 6 drivers for change, but I don't think any would have thought the impact, thought the internet was fairly, wow, look at that. And everyone is saying, wow, look at that, it's generative AI. Whether it continues to reach this sort of market that everyone is talking about is yet to be seen. Nevertheless, how we as humans interact with generative AI and digital innovation will be the blueprint for the future. What we're looking at here is, first of all, actually sort of AI-ish has been around for quite a while. And, we started off with Siri, and Siri, what's the weather like? And you can see how, if you like, the developments following ChatGPT's launch has started to increase. To start with, it was a very slow adoption, but you can see the impact that it's now having on individuals in the workplace and at home, of course. And the technical automation with and without generative AI is quite an interesting graph. But unlike any other industrial revolution, of which generative AI is now classed as being the next one, is the impact. It's sort of almost previous industrial revolutions have factored on perhaps lower level jobs that help deliver and keep everything operational. Whereas traditionally, if you like, the management and leadership is about sort of guiding and directing and ensuring governance and the quality and innovation. Here you see generative AI is hitting more greatly with those who are at master's level or higher than that, but certainly at degree level. So this is a very different take on this of being a industrial revolution that impacts the well-educated. And so for us, of course, we feel this is a critical factor for SteppinUp participants to consider. Again, not a Brill slide, but it's taken from research. But if you look at it, where the professions most likely to be adopting generative AI, and education and training, of course, is standing outside there, which is probably why we have to be ahead of the game, or ahead of the curve, as they may say. But have a look at that, because in the main, Stepping Up participants are in professional areas, in managerial leadership. So therefore, understanding how you work with digital innovation, and in particular generative AI, is now going to be a critical component part of your job, and certainly your future career. So what's the difference between AI and generative AI? So AI is artificial intelligence. So AI perform tasks to mimic human intelligence, like Siri and Alexa and chat box. But machine learning, as it's generative AI is also known, can learn from data patterns without human direction. So if you put into Copilot, can you create me a letter in this response? It is actually acting as a human and gathering data and coming up with a template. Right? So content creation and data synthesis are the critical factors. And certainly for me, when I use that, that speeds the process of my work. So I don't have to go necessarily to Google, nothing wrong with going to Google, or do wider research. It's there at a click of a button. And that saves me, I reckon, a few hours a day, and therefore has become part of my normal operating procedures. Understanding how you work with, how the human intelligence works with generative AI is a critical skill set for you for now and the future. So what else do we need to learn about digital innovation? It's not all about generative AI, but it is about how we might work slightly differently. So the human factor, the brain factor, if you like, the empathy, the intergage, the social part of creating teams and working needs to work in harmony with technology. And understanding that, I think, is probably critical. We would like you to explore that further. So here's a slide which I quite like, actually, for success. But this shows my learning pattern. I little cartoons and everything, but some of our participants had said, "Oh, I find that all a bit messy." So here is a clearer one. So in the main, looking at what are the critical skill sets for the future? You're looking, if you like, under the self-management, focusing, integrity, adapting, initiative, social intelligence, communicating, feeling, collaborating, leading, and innovation, the curiosity, creativity, sense-making, and critical thinking. And it's the critical thinking part, project management, how you bring your analysis and cognitive ability and harness it with your social interface skills. That's the skills for now and the future. And of course, Stepping Up helps you develop those as part of your leadership journey. So another interesting, because we've gone back to talk about health and well-being, here we're looking at building the adaptability muscle. And I quite like that phrase, but a lot of people talk about building resilience, and we're looking at COVID. So in the main, resilience, it looks at responding to an external event, but adaptability moves us on from enduring a challenge or thriving, so it's beyond a bounce back. So we bounce forward. Learning agility, personal growth, emotional flexibility, openness to experience is part of a multi-dimensional understanding of adaptability, and the ability to remain calm under pressure, under deliberate pressure, not just maybe something that's just emerged. And that also, of course, highlights into emotional intelligence and how we manage that emotional responses within ourselves, and how we can continue to bounce forward after instances But it's not just responding to an external event, it's actually building the way in which you can, with health and well-being, create adaptability and flexibility regardless of changing circumstances and influences that may come unexpectedly or expectedly. So here, the researchers now say you need a 5-year career plan, but with, and probably you do. Yeah. I think it's quite useful to have a focus and a goal, and we encourage all our Stepping Up participants to do that. And we have a career passport, so you can reflect. So reflection is a critical component part of looking at your self-awareness and your impact, developing those cognitive abilities that will sit with your social interface, the way in which you work and manage with people. Now, I would leave that up to you, but certainly having a goal that stretches beyond a year and is quite important, I think, because you also have to be opportunistic. Other things emerge. We're in an ever-changing world. What opportunities can you grasp? Where are you going to go forward? Something might come up. Never thought about that. Certainly that's happened with me. I've been very opportunistic, as they say, in my career. And you know that I'm on my 5th career now. So please do have a career plan. Understand it's flexible. Visit it regularly. But remember that your health and well-being plan is part of that. Building your resilience, your adaptability, your ability to flex, and understanding about global trends, local, and how that impacts on you locally is a critical component part of you developing your leadership capability, your adaptability, your ability to manage yourself and your family and others, and more importantly, to increase your self-worth, to understand that everyone is unique, and to celebrate in that uniqueness and understand the part we all play in both local and global changes, and to welcome and appreciate every day the values that we do have. Thank you for coming with me on the Global Trends journey. I hope you found it interesting and can take forward certain nuggets from today that will help you reframe, relearn, reshape, and become part of the improving, if you like, how you see the world and how you take that forward into your workplace, into your career, and into your outside life. And for that, I think Global Trends plays a pivotal part in understanding where we all sit within the wider stage. Thanks for listening, and look forward to seeing you on the next module.